In the headlines, despite a Caribbean-wide outrage at this year's CSEC and CAPE results, CXC says it will not do a general review of the exams. 3 elderly patients died from COVID-19 in less than 24 hours, taking the death toll to 74. Over 100 nurses, supported by a few doctors from the Georgetown Hospital, protest for 50% increase in salaries, risk allowances, pension, gratuity, and other benefits.
We need our allowances!
We need our allowances!
We need our allowances!
No money, no!
The Office of the President instructs all of its employees to return to work on a full-time basis. Over 100 witnesses to testify against controversial returning officer from Region 4, Claremont Mingo. And in sport, the story of how financial constraints almost robbed a student athlete of a secondary education. With the news, I'm Neil Marks. We're glad you could join us. Despite a Caribbean-wide outrage at this year's CSEC and CAPE exam results, the Caribbean Examinations Council, CXC, says it is pleased with the performance this year. CXC Registrar Dr. Wayne Wesley, during a virtual press conference on Friday, said that a general regrading of the results will not happen. Instead, CXC is urging education ministries and students to submit requests for queries or a review by October 23rd. After then, the official results will be released on November 6th. Since the release of its preliminary results on September 22nd, a number of Caribbean countries, including Guyana, reported major discrepancies with the results. Dr. Wayne on Friday said it was basically impossible for some of these discrepancies given the rigorous system CXC has in place.
We have done all our internal checks. I'm saying that is why I can respond to you about the grade, about all A's and getting a G. There's no such grade. I can respond to you about the other issues that are there. And I'm saying we have to be very responsible that whatever we are responding to is something that we can verify. All our data that we have reviewed, all the things that we have looked at and ensure that our processes and systems are in place has not revealed what is being said. And I'm asking, provide us with the information so that we can address them. And where ministries and local registrars have done so, we have addressed them. I am satisfied with the service we have delivered to our Caribbean students. And of course, there's always room for improvement, and we will be doing that. But certainly with our approach this year and what we have done to respond in the face of this pandemic, was always with the interest of the students in mind. And we are satisfied, and I'm quite sure you would also recognize the improved performance of students this year. These requests must first come to CXC. We have not given any consideration to a waiver of any fees, because I am saying, while all of this discussion is going on, where representation has been made and we have certain discussion, we treat with certain issues accordingly. The general approach for CSEC results and CAPE results, remember the vast majority of individuals would have received acceptable grades. So if persons have concerns with those acceptable grades, we expect that they will submit them through the requisite processes that we have for reviews. Where we have the ministries of education making their own representation on certain matters that are of our importance, we will address those, and those would not cause students to be asking for a review. For example, the issue about ungraded and those the issues that we have been treating with ungraded results, those issues will be dealt with as the Ministry of Education would write us on, and we are working with them. That will not be at any cost to students.
Now, over 100 nurses, supported by a few doctors from the Georgetown Public Hospital, staged a protest action on Friday on East Street in Georgetown for a 50% increase in salaries, risk allowances, pension, gratuity, and other benefits. Similar protests were also held at the New Amsterdam Hospital in Region 6 and the Saudi Hospital in Region 2. Isanella Patro has the details.
We need our allowances!
We need our allowances!
We need our allowances!
We need our allowances!
No money, no work!
No money, no work!
That was the situation Friday morning on East Street, Georgetown, where nurses from the Georgetown Public Hospital staged a protest for better wages and other benefits. The protest comes after nurses in Linden, the West Bank, and the west coast of Demerara held similar protests on Wednesday and Thursday. The nurses at GPHC threatened that if their demands are not met, they will not be working. Their position is that since they are essential workers during the pandemic, they should have essential pay. Nurse John Allen spoke with reporters.
We all here, some of our staff are here, standing in solidarity, making a firm statement that we will need our allowances that was promised for us for months. Since COVID had started, there are a lot of nurses here who have been on quarantine for weeks, being away from their family, from their friend, from their loved one, sacrificing. So we need our allowances, we need it. If we're not having our allowances, we're going to take this stand on a daily basis until our demands are being met. Yeah. There's a lot of us here from Georgetown Public Hospital who are not on our pension plan because of the year in which this cooperation would have became a cooperation. So there are a lot of us who aren't allowed any pension, or who aren't pensionable, or who aren't even receiving a gratuity. All right, I'm a nurse for almost 9 years, and what is there for me? There's no benefits. Why am I going to stay here for 33 plus years when I wouldn't be receiving any more pension, when I'm not pensionable?
A doctor attached to the Georgetown Public Hospital and 2 other nurses also spoke about their experiences working during the pandemic, as a number of healthcare workers have already been exposed to the deadly disease.
All healthcare workers should be together in this struggle because a long time we're dealing with a lot of grievances in the health sector. Since in the previous administration, and even before then, we had a lot of serious grievances and it was not addressed. So if this mobilization got to start the new wave, then we got to do it. Because we got a lot of grievances that we need to solve. We need PPEs, proper PPEs for our healthcare workers. We need our overtime, non-tax, and all these things. We need land for the public servants, and we need our increases for the year.
Most days when we turn up to work, our supervisor has to work all over looking to dispense gum for us. The persons who are working in the night shift are forced to be wrapped with sheets to protect themselves. This is very unfair. You can't build a billboard for someone that come in for 24 hours and the nurses doesn't have PPE. We are being treated unfair. It's not that we don't want to work, we want to work. I'm one of the most dedicated nurses at GPHC. But if we're not protected, we have our families to go home to.
They're spending money on inconsequential things. Let them spend on things that are worth it, like the nurse's salary, increases in salary. We need that today, or we're not working. It's going to be radical if they don't do something about this now.
Representative of the Guyana Public Service Union, Owen John, said the union stands with the nurses during this time.
GPSU stands with the workers in this struggle. Nurses are not receiving a living wage. They get a salary today. By the next 10 days, they got to be borrowing money to live all the month. That is what's happening. You got to give people a living wage. Give them conditions of service that make sense. Give them equipment to work with. Give them resources to work with.
Nurses attached to the Study Hospital in Region 2 and the New Amsterdam Hospital in Region 6 also protested for better working conditions. Meanwhile, Minister of Health Dr. Frank Anthony on Thursday asked the nurses to be patient until the budget is passed. The budget is expected to be passed Friday in the National Assembly, and the Health Minister said some $150 million have been allocated to pay risk allowances to health workers. Reporting for the newsroom, I am Itanella Pato.
Guyana on Friday recorded its 74th COVID-19 death less than 24 hours after 2 others died. The latest victim is a 71-year-old woman from Pomeroon, Supernam, Region 2. She died while receiving care at a medical facility, the Ministry of Health revealed.
On August 31st, the controversial returning officer Claremont Mingo made his first appearance before Chief Magistrate Anne McLennan at the Georgetown Magistrates Court on 4 charges and was released on $600,000 bail. On Friday morning, Mingo made another appearance before the Chief Magistrate, where Prosecutor Tariq Mohammed from the chambers of the Director of Public Prosecutions made a partial disclosure of statements. Mohammed also made an application for summary disposal, which would allow Mingo to plead to the charges. However, Mingo's attorney, Nigel Hughes, objected on the basis that he wanted to know if the police were bringing any more charges against his client. The prosecutor disclosed that the file is so far incomplete, and at this time, he would be unable to answer that question. He indicated that so far he has over 100 witnesses to testify. The chief magistrate set December 15 for full disclosure. The first two charges against Mingo alleged that on March 5, 2020, at the High and Hatfield Street Georgetown office, he engaged in misconduct as a public officer by declaring a result for District 4 without ascertaining the total votes cast in favor of each list in the said district. The case against him is that he failed to add up the votes recorded in favor of each list in accordance with the statements of poll and in the eyes of the law amounts to a breach of the public's trust without any reasonable excuse or justification. The last two charges allege that Mingo again committed the same offense on March 13, 2020 at the head office of the Guyana Elections Commission on High and Cowan Streets in Kingston, Georgetown. Mingo is also before another court with a joint fraud charge with former government minister Valda Lawrence. The charge alleges that he, having been procured by Lawrence on or about March 5, 2020, at Hatfield and High Streets in Georgetown, uttered to the Chief Elections Officer of GCOM, Keith Lowenfield, a Form 24 Representation of the People Act Regional Elections election form dated March 5th, knowing same to be forged with intent to defraud the people of the state of Guyana. Reporting for the newsroom, Fariza Hanif.
Still ahead on the newsroom, Office of the President instructs all of its employees to return to work on a full-time basis. And the opposition leader, Joseph Harman, rejects claims that the APNU Plus AFC returned damaged and defective vehicles. This is the newsroom. The government on Friday said it has moved one step closer to reopening the country as it sought to defend the decision to ask all staff members attached to the Office of the President to return to work on a full-time basis. While Guyana is now addressing a spike in COVID-19 cases and deaths, Minister within the Ministry of the Prime Minister with responsibility for government information, Kwame McCoy, said other government agencies will soon follow suit as the demand for government services is on the increase. We have more from Kurt Campbell.
In what is seen as a departure from the rotation arrangement in which public servants have been working in recent months, the Office of the President has issued a memo asking all of its staff members to return to work on a full-time basis. This comes even as Guyana has recorded its deadliest month for COVID-19 with a major spike in the number of COVID-19 cases and deaths for September. The memo is also flouting the government's own gazetted COVID-19 guidelines, which clearly state that all persons employed within the public service, a semi-autonomous agency, statutory body or state-owned enterprise shall work on rotation. Minister with responsibility for government information Kwame McCoy has explained that the move to have all staff return to work is in keeping with the government's push to gradually reopen the country and in a bid to ensure that services are provided to the people of Guyana. McCoy spoke with the newsroom via telephone on Friday.
And so you would appreciate that even though we have a rotation system in place for workers, many of them have not honored what the system requires them to, meaning that many of them use this occasion to abscond from work on days when they should even be at work, and at times, and don't want to be harsh on the workers in general, but this has been the experience in many instances. But that apart, the more critical, the more urgent need is for us to be able to provide service to the people of Guyana.
The issue was first raised by opposition leader Joseph Harman during a virtual press conference on Friday. McCoy acknowledged that while public servants were asked to return to work on a rotation basis, the delivery of services to citizens has been severely affected and in some cases stalled for several months. He told the newsroom that even the use of virtual technology has not been useful and practical in all cases.
People are anxious to get out of the situation in many instances, and people are back to demanding services in the normative fashion, and they are therefore experiencing many situations where the people who are supposed to provide the services in the ministries and government departments are not at work. We've been experimenting and we've been actually using the virtual technology to be able to communicate with staff and in relation to work, but not in every case this is required and is practical in the sense that there's some people whose work is not just being attended to using the virtual technology. They have to actually be in office to get actual stuff done and to do things.
While staff will be returning to the same environment that they left, McCoy assured that there are intentions to sanitize the workplace and offer care packages to staff. He said they will be assisted in practicing the established protocols of washing hands and wearing masks. The minister further said that the experience where services are affected goes across the government sector, and the Office of the President has taken the lead in what will happen in other ministries and government agencies in coming weeks. Kirk Campbell, Newsroom.
Police have arrested a 65-year-old man who reportedly dumped his unconscious brother in a trench at Denamstel, West Coast, Demerara last night. Police headquarters in a statement noted that 55-year-old Winston Jordan of Backstreet, Denamstel was consuming alcohol with his brother and subsequently left his company, but the brother ran behind him and tried to pull him back. The police report noted that Jordan held on to a neighbor's gate, but his brother continued to pull him, during which he lost his grip on the gate. Police said that the suspect pushed Jordan to the ground, resulting in the victim hitting his head on the road and losing consciousness. The suspect then dragged his brother across the street, where he threw him into a trench and refused to render assistance. The motionless body of the man was pulled from the trench by two passers-by who saw what transpired. Jordan was taken to the Lenora Cottage Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. Opposition leader Joseph Harman has lashed out at statements made by Minister of Governance Gail Teixeira, where she claimed that several vehicles returned by the previous APNU plus AFC government were in a bad shape. Harman said confidently on Friday that those statements are nothing short of a lie.
Statements in the National Assembly by Minister of Governance Gail Teixeira that former ministers of the APNU AFC government had handed over damaged and neglected vehicles to the new PPP ministers have not found favour with opposition leader Joseph Harman. Harman said the statement by Teixeira to justify the spending of $95 million to purchase new vehicles for top officials of the government is totally erroneous and a total lie. He said all the vehicles were returned in tip-top condition and are now being used by the new ministers of the PPP government.
That's a totally erroneous statement, Adam. In fact, when we demitted office, all of the vehicles that were used by ministers were parked in the office of the president, that is now called. And the new ministers were there lining up and jostling as if it was a vehicle market. They were so impressed by the condition of these vehicles. And if you're talking now about buying vehicles for the president, the vice president, and the prime minister, those vehicles were in tip-top condition. In fact, they are still being used right now. So I would really want to know, what is it that Mr. Teixeira is talking about? If President Ali has gone into the vehicle that was used by President Granger and he's found anything like that, if Prime Minister Mark Phillips has gone into the vehicles used by former Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu and he's found anything like that,
Teixeira had defended the $95 million allocated in the 2020 budget to buy new vehicles for top officials of the government, inclusive of the President, Prime Minister, and Vice President. She said then that this was as a consequence of the damaged state in which several vehicles were handed over to the new government by former ministers of the APNU AFC government. Harman, who has slammed the government for failing to increase the wages of public servants, believes it was a waste of money to buy new vehicles. The opposition leader said that the claims by Teixeira is a total lie.
The PPP promised a 50% salary increase for public servants. This regime has delivered zero. They have proven that their promises are hollow. They have nothing for public servants while the PPP is splurging an extravagant $95 million unnecessarily on new high-end luxury vehicles for Irfan Ali, Barra Jagdeo, and Mark Phillips in the office of the president. Then we later found another $13 million for another new vehicle for Mark Phillips. This, of course, was in the office of the Prime Minister then. He was later to explain to the Assembly that this was an off-road vehicle that was being purchased.
Harman in turn claimed that a dead rat was found in a vehicle Teixeira returned in 2015 when the PPP lost the elections and which was used by then Minister of Public Infrastructure David Patterson. It was Patterson who on Monday grilled Teixeira on the funding which is to be spent from October to December 2020. Patterson was also concerned that with the short time frame of the 3 months during which the procurement and purchase of the vehicles are to be completed. Teixeira said come 2021 the government will make all the details in relation to the purchase of the vehicles available. Kurt Campbell, Newsroom.
When the newsroom returns, businesses agree to accept certificates gained from online courses and a policeman is stabbed while trying to make peace between two men. This is the newsroom. We're glad you could stay with us. The Education Ministry, the Public Service Ministry and the Private Sector Commission on Friday signed a Memorandum of Understanding which will allow for businesses to accept the certificates from thousands of Guyanese who have completed the Commonwealth of Learning and Coursera Workforce Recovery Program. Some 35,000 Guyanese have registered for the program and 970 have so far graduated. Isanella Patro has the details.
With thousands of Guyanese learning a new skill or being reskilled through the Commonwealth of Learning and Coursera program, the Ministries of Education and Public Service is collaborating with the Private Sector Commission to recognize the certificates of these persons and provide them with employment. The Coursera program was launched to assist persons during the COVID-19 pandemic. The program offers over 4,000 courses in various fields from Ivy Leagues, universities around the world. The MOU between the government and the private sector was signed at the National Center for Educational Resource Development in Kingston, Georgetown. Minister of Education Priya Manik-Chan said the private sector will further have access to a database of these qualified persons and hire them when there is a need for particular skills.
Persons started asking us if their certificates will be recognized, and we started exploring that with both the private sector and the government head of public sector, which is the Minister of Public Service. And both parties are prepared to do several things. One, drive the program, that is, let their members and employees know about this program so that they can benefit from it, but also recognize the certificate. So if someone goes to the Public Service Ministry or any public service agency in Guyana with these certificates, they will be recognized for what they're worth.
Chairman of the Private Sector Commission, Nicholas Boyer, said the pandemic has brought with it weaknesses in the structure of the labor force, and this initiative will help to revitalize it.
The MOU represents words, but the actions behind the MOU represents people. It represents people who want to empower themselves for let's say, what is going on in a coronavirus pandemic and what will come after the coronavirus pandemic to the Guyanese economy. And for us, we are happy to help to promote it. We are happy to empower the Guyanese workforce in any way that we can, whether it is upskilling or whether you have persons who are changing course in their career and want to acquire the skill sets that will allow them to do that. So for us, it was very easy to have worked with the Ministry of Education in this, and I'm very proud of this initiative that they have taken.
The deadline to be registered for the program is October 31st, and once persons registered through the Ministry of Education, the program is absolutely free. Minister Manik-Chan said the response to the program has been massive, with more than 35,000 registered, 17,500 active on the platform, and 970 persons have graduated. Reporting for the newsroom, I am Isanella Patwo.
A young police constable who tried to make peace between two men who were fighting is now in the hospital, nursing stab wounds to the lower neck and lower back. Police headquarters in a statement noted that 20-year-old Marcus Richmond was walking home along Quamina Street, Batavia, East Coast Demerara on Thursday at around 19:40 when he saw two men in an altercation. The police report said that the constable approached them in a bid to keep the peace, but the 35-year-old suspect became annoyed and told the cop that the altercation is none of his concern. The constable then continued his journey home when the same suspect attacked him from behind with a knife and stabbed him twice, the police reported. He was rushed to the Georgetown Public Hospital by a family member and is admitted in a serious but stable condition. The suspect was later arrested and is in police custody, assisting with the investigation. Minister of Education Priya Manik-Chan says printed worksheets for students in Regions 1 and 7 will be distributed this weekend. The Education Ministry commenced online learning for students across the country 2 weeks ago, but hundreds in the hinterland regions do not have access to the internet. The delay in getting these worksheets to the children on time is due to printing issues, the minister stated.
We came up with a package of different measures that we can use. There is the learning channel, which we have completely revamped to deliver timetabled instruction. So there's actually a timetable. It has an hour, it has the class, it has the topic. So persons are not unsure. That timetable mirrors what would have happened in the classroom during this time. So if you were in nursery at week 3 and you were doing at that time gender, I'm a boy, am I a boy or am I a girl? That's what you're doing at this time. In week 3 at grade 2, you would be doing the family. That's what you're doing on the learning channel at this time. So we're following the curriculum and delivering accordingly. We know though that the learning channel doesn't reach everybody. So we have also the radio. The radio has instruction for grade 1, interactive radio instruction. And then for grades 2 to 5 in the afternoons, radio broadcast, math, English, social studies, science. We know though that radio and television don't meet everyone, so we have print materials. We did not have any print material for this term going forward when I came into the ministry. And so that has been the challenge. Persons have literally been sitting around the table day and night trying to create worksheets. We got those from our professional staff earlier last week. We had problems with printers. I'm being very frank. I've been very candid with everybody since we started this. Printers told us that for them to be able to print for the entire country, and we contacted every printer we knew, whether they were shortlisted in the ministry or not, because it's an emergency. And all of them had the same problem. That is, because of COVID or whatever else, they did not have ink, paper, capacity to print what we need to be printed in the time we needed it. So we found a solution, and the solution was to use the various newspapers to print on newsprint. Now that's not our preferred method or our preferred choice of paper, but if we want this in the hands of our children right now, we chose to use the newsprint. And this weekend we begin that distribution. We're receiving and packing it now, literally now as we speak, and that will begin going out this weekend. We are going to have to rely on parents far more than we ever did to make sure they do the kind of parenting at home that we need for supervision. We can't send teachers into people's homes because it's not safe for the children and their families or for the teachers and their families. And we can't bring them into schools. We would love to have our kids in schools. We can never replace the value of a teacher in front of a classroom. But while this is happening, we need our parents to be good parents at home. Make sure your children are in front of the classroom, the TV or computer. Make sure they're sitting at a table when the radio is on. Make sure you've cleaned down the table if it's the same dining table you're using to eat and do your work.
Just ahead on the newsroom, the financial, weather and bridge reports along with sport. Welcome back. This is the newsroom. It's time for sport. There was a time when national youth cricketer Jonathan Rampersad wanted to quit school altogether. Financial constraints had taken a toll on his family, and while he did spend a period away from school, he found a will to return. This week, he emerged with 11 subjects at CXC, and now with renewed vigor, he is aiming to become an agricultural engineer. Akeem Green journeyed to Berbice to meet the young man.
Four months prior to the CXC, I've thought about giving up because my mother wasn't wealthy enough getting me or affording to send me at school, and she faced many challenges, and I could see that I had to quit for a month, and it was the 3 of JC senior teacher who had got me back into school and got me up and running, and I am thankful for it.
The 16-year-old wrote 11 subjects in this year's Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate and secured 9 grade 1s and 2 grade 2s. He reflected it was truly hard work over the years that brought him success.
Since I've been 8 years old, I've been going to the farm with my parents, carrying my books. While they do their work, I'll be reading my book in the afternoon. Coming forward now, when I wrote National Grade 6 Common Entrance, I had 499 marks and I was placed at President College, and my mother took transfer for me and bring me to JC Johnson Secondary School, which I wanted to go to PHS or Multi, but she couldn't afford to send me there. After, in 2018, when I represented Guyana in Jamaica, when I came home, I had a tragic shock of my father, and that was the point in life that I had to take more responsibility in the home, where I had to take up responsibility that my father performed, and it was my mother who would have been the sole breadwinner for the house. Coming into the CXC, it was a tough challenge for me because I had to balance cricket and academics both equally.
The tragedy he speaks of is his father, a farmer who suffered a stroke which has resulted in his left arm being paralyzed. His mother, who sells confectionery and food outside of his school, had to step up to be the sole breadwinner.
Financially, I work very hard to support him. And morning time when I wake him up, something say, "Oh, mommy, I want to sleep." I say, "No, you have to make sacrifice because this is once in a lifetime opportunity." And that's the way. Sometimes, of course, I fight, I don't like. But I thank God.
Cricket and academics were not the only aspect of his life he had to balance, since he took up the role of farming for the family.
After I come to school in the morning and I go home back, I go to the farm in the afternoon. I spend like an hour some afternoon 2 hours, some afternoon more. I would miss practice, usually when I spend more. I come to practice, go home back around 6, as sir give me extra lesson from 6 to 7, and the rest time in the night I spend completing my SBA.
For Rampersad, he was resting his under 15 selectively, and luckily his secondary school neighbors the Rosal Tongue Youth and Sports Club, which developed him into the exceptional talent.
So Jonathan is following in a well-defined tradition, and we are very happy for him. We are very, very proud of him. And those of us who know his life know that to succeed, he really had to go through some difficult times. So we as a club are very proud of him. We have 2 other boys who did reasonably well. Lucas Arthur from the club, I think, has 6 grade 1s. And Mahendra Gopilar, who is a teammate of Jonathan and the Guyana junior team, also did well. And
I know that's a big miss for me this year in the under-17 tournament. I could have been climbing another milestone again. And then again, seeing young players like St. Clair and Hetmai and Chemo perform, it gave me a big motivation that I could do well and one day reach to the top and accomplish another goal of mine. I want to play cricket at the highest level and wear the maroon cap one day in life. And then academically, I want to do good and make my parents proud.
Well, I know he is going to be a great man because I am going to be with him, guide him along, push him to become whatever he wants to be in the future.
An aspiring agricultural engineer like his grandfather, Brij Mohan Ramsaran, young Ramprasad is hoping that he can be awarded a scholarship in the near future so that he can be afforded a chance to live his dream. For the newsroom, Akin Green.